So as you can see, the neighbor here cuts theirs scalp to the ground, and these both were installed. These lawns were installed at the same time. Now what I do is I mow mine high, they mow theirs low. As you can see, it's just, well, there's nothing there, it's just dirt. It's just dirt. So anyway, this is what I am working on. This is fairly fresh, so it's like really thin and sparse. It was sod that was bought on a construction boom and during the sod season. The best sod that I've gotten was off season, between November and January, and because it isn't harvested as often and it's let to get more density on the farms. But even though it was not the best sod, it's coming in pretty good with the higher cut. You know, how you can mow high, there's several issues with it. Let me point out one of the not so obvious factors first. You want your passes to be as steady of a pace as possible. You don't want transitions in the machine's rate of speed if you can help it. You also want to, because what's happening is as you're going forward, the grasses are getting accumulated. What's not getting cut at the front of the blades is getting accumulated at the back of the baffles, and that steady, constant pressure creates a normalcy for the blades. You're trying to apply a mechanical motion to an organic material. The best way that it seems to respond is if it's a steady pace, not interrupted or anything like that, so that the airflow and everything is correct. But anyway, then also to make the straightest lines you can, because when you turn, then that material slips past the back baffles because it's sliding right or left on the edge of the material, and then it slips past and you'll get irregularities in the cut from making turns. So you want to prevent that as much as you can. What helps too for me is the taller tires, because then my deck can be at a higher position relative to the ground, yet I won't have as much belt deflection. All my forces are kept more linear, which helps with cavitation, oscillation, whatever you want to call it, belt wear, deflection angle of the belt. So with the taller tires, I'm able to get that higher cut without just actually having the mower jacked up all the way, because on some mowers I tried cutting the limiting tab off and then using the deck adjustments to go higher than what the factory position would make allowable. But the problem is that the belt would rub on the back of the deck, wear out the deck, you know. So if you've got a low slung chassis, it's going to be hard to get a tall cut, and the only way that I know of to raise the chassis without engineering it is to put the taller tires on. But I'm enjoying the taller tires. They really make a better ride, and the mower can get up over the ledge on concrete better, and you're not having to push on the foot lifts and strain with all your might and just hope that you're clearing stuff, because you have so much more clearance, you know. Now these newer properties, the concrete seems like it's always higher ledge, but then that evens out over time, either from the concrete settling or from accretion. Accretion would be where the soil and sod around it accumulates because it's growing, and it converts UV light from the sun to cellulose through photosynthesis, and then that builds up around the edge of the concrete, and then pretty soon what was concrete ledge then becomes a smoother transition, or one where the soil is higher than the concrete. But either way, the taller tires help a lot to navigate through that. And by being able to navigate over across a concrete there, granted you wouldn't do it when it was rainy or wet because it would stick down on the concrete, but in normal conditions, being able to go straight across that little piece of concrete there, then that keeps down my traffic lines. Because one other thing I focus on a lot is traffic lines. Like I saw a video yesterday of a guy mowing in the wet, and there was some areas where he took his tires over the same line 3 or 4 times. And every time he went across, that was agitating it more, and he was getting more and more of a mud line. And it seemed like he wasn't even focused on minimizing his number of passes on traffic lines. And that's where the 72 comes in handy again. In that, you see, when I come this way down the line, and then I go back, because of the overhang on the deck, that tire doesn't ride the same line. Whereas a lot of these mowers now, the tires stick out exactly to the edge of the deck. So your return and your return pass on a pass is actually on the very same traffic line. Which if it's wet soil, or, well, it's not good for compaction or with the wet soil issue where you're trying to mow in the wet, you know. So that's the things that I use on that. Of course, with the tall cuts, it's harder to do, takes more time. You got to have good sharp blades because you're catching the plant. It's easy to catch the plant down here by the root. It can't hardly get out of the way. You know what I mean? That's easy. You get up here and now it can scroll around in every different direction because it has more area, room to move and not get cut, you see. And you're dealing in this case with sparse lawn, so there's not much to hold that plant up for the cutting. There's no peer pressure. There's no abundance of grasses around it that hold it up where it doesn't have a place to move out of the way. And that's the essence of the cross-up cut, is because when you go this way and back, you're laying the plant over to some degree, even if it gets cut. And then it's going to spring back up to some degree. And when it does, it'll deposit some soils on the right and left, and it'll leave a place where it could lay right back over again like a hinge if you came over in the same direction as you did before. So you'll have the same effect, versus if you mow this way the first time you cut and then this way. Now remember that soil is built along the hinge. Now that soil becomes like a peer pressure thing. You'd rather have grasses as peer pressure, but absent that, you use what you got, and that's that little soil berm that was left there from the first pass, that it can't as easily bend over. Now another issue is when you do this cross up, what you're also doing is you're spreading the seed bidirectionally. So if you've got a patch like where the septic tank is and you mow it this way, it's blowing it out this way, and then the next, when you come crossways, it's blowing it out the opposite directions. So in essence, by doing the cross up passes, you can homogenize the density of the lawn. Oh, another thing that I do to do the high cuts is that by using these taller tires and running under inflation, like you can see that deflection right there is a good example. I run around 6 psi or so. It lets me absorb the bumps, the little anomalies they just suck up, and even sprinkler heads, it just marshmallows around them. They're a little higher in the pressure in the back than I normally would, but that's because they're new on the rim and seating in the bead still. But as it being able to absorb the anomalies and the bumps, it lets the machine stay settled. And I feel that that's just as important as the steady fluid motion, like a painter's brush stroke when you're making your passes, on the effectiveness of cutting high. So then you don't have an unsettled machine because the suspension is at the point of the deflection. So the suspension is effective immediately at the very point of the anomaly that's causing the necessity of the suspension. So that's another factor. I just finishing this one up, got some nice edging going on the street there. Now, I brought up the issue about the time of day service here because too many times I was having to wait to accommodate their desires on later in the day, and I would get rained out, you know, and it's like then I have to come back on the weekend or work twice as hard to get the surface blown off. But you know, he saw it my way, and basically that was going to be the only way. And yeah, these folks, they went off the weekends for me, and then they're going to accommodate me on giving me the calling the ball on time of day. But and it seems as I'm kind of throwing my weight around a little bit, but the truth of the matter is I have a lot of weight to throw due to the quality of the service that I'm able to provide with the equipment and the skills and things that I have to bring to the table. So that helps a lot. You can't just come out here fresh and start throwing your weight around and be successful at holding clients. I've had a lot of people actually say, hey, you know what you're doing, we're going to let you decide on, you know, whatever issues on cut height. And I appreciate that, because when I'm out here on the mower, as many hours as I am, I'm in the moment. I see the needs of the lawn. One day it might need to be cut higher, the next day it might need to be cut lower. As the drought comes in, the blade, you know, it shrinks or whatever. And the lawn will shrink through the course of the day. In the morning you cut it, it might seem awful high, and you come back later that day and it shrinks. You know, that's just the way it works. So, all right, I'm gonna get back to work.